Hello, my name is Cody Chester, and today I'm going to be going over the Fizz Buzz algorithm. This is a fairly common algorithm, and it's a good place to start if you're just starting out with solving algorithms. In each algorithm that I attempt to solve, I like to start with the same systematic approach, so that by the time I'm ready to code, I have an established path that I'm going to take. Tim Weigel and Richard Lee helped me develop a process I use for solving whiteboard algorithms, and the first step that I like to take is to read the problem to ensure I understand what is being asked. So in this instance, write a program that outputs a list of strings for the numbers 1 to n. But for multiples of 3, it should output fizz instead of the number, and for multiples of 5, it should output buzz. For numbers which are multiples of both 3 and 5, it should output Fizz Buzz. So even though this may sound fairly straightforward that any multiple of 3, 5, or 3 and 5 will be replaced with the words Fizz Buzz and Fizz Buzz respectively, I also like to ask a few clarifying questions. In a whiteboarding scenario where I have like Tim or Richard to ask these clarifying questions, I would ask something like, will n be equal to 0? Will n be null? And then what should be returned if these values are 0 or null? In this scenario, the n value is not going to be 0, it's not going to be null, so I'm just going to move forward as if it is a number. Having that, I need to ensure that the input and the output produced are the desired outcomes. So that I use an example. So example input n equals 15. It's not 0, it's not null. And then the example output from that would be and this may take a second to type, but 1, 2, fizz for 3, fizz, 7, 8, fizz, make sure we get buzz, 11, fizz, 13, 14, and finally fizz buzz. Alright, so the steps that I've taken so far in solving this algorithm is to ensure that when I read the initial prompt, I understood what it was asking, and that I asked those clarifying questions to ensure that I'm not overlooking something or jumping too quickly into the code. The next thing that I did was give an example input and output. So with an example input of n equals 15, I get an example output of 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, fizz, and so on and so forth throughout the fizz buzz all the way to 15. With that, I'm able to establish that that is exactly what the input and output should look like given the algorithm above, and my next step is to go into the pseudocode. For me, this is the best time for my brain to think over what I'm actually going to code when I get to coding. So the first thing that I do is make a little bit of space for myself and say what I want to do first. So the first thing that I want to do is create a variable to hold the output, and that will be a list of strings, making sure that I am answering the prompt or returning what the prompt would want. So I'm going to create a variable to hold that list of strings, and then I want to add the word fizz for any number that is a multiple of 3. And then this is also a good time to make sure that you reread the question so that if you do put something incorrect in your pseudocode, you're not just running from there doing it incorrect. So fizz is the multiple of 3, or the word that should be replacing any multiple of 3. So I'm going to continue. Then add the word buzz for any number that is a multiple of 5. And finally, add the word Fizz Buzz for any number that is a multiple of 3 and 5. All right. So I understand what I want it to do, but now how am I going to do that? For me, I also want to add the numbers 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, those ones that aren't going to be changed into Fizz and Buzz. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is that I'm going to iterate through a for loop, and I'm going to iterate through the for loop and add numbers along with the fizzes and buzzes. All right. This concludes my preparation steps for how I'm going to solve an algorithm. In my mind, this has set up enough for me to actually get into the coding portion of the algorithm. So I'm going to go ahead and start that first. Public static list of strings. Name this one Fizz Buzz. It's being passed an integer n. So let's just talk about this signature really quick. The public is so that the method can be called outside of the class or accessed outside of it. The static is so that it can be called without initialization as an object first. And the Pascal case for the Fizz Buzz is because the method is public. So I want this to be accessible, say if I were going to input it into a program. The next portion of this is where I'm going to create that first variable to hold my list. So we're going to go list string, and then I can name this new list or something like that, but I think I like Fizz Buzz list. We'll go ahead and set that equal to new list. All right, so we've set our variable up, which is going to hold our list of strings and be the return of those lists of strings for the numbers 1 to n. Next, I'm going to hop right into my for loop. So for int I is equal to 1, because we established that we would not be starting with 0 earlier up at the top by asking questions. I is less than or equal to n, and then we're going to increment I each time. Getting into our for loop. The first step inside of our for loop is actually going to be setting up our if statement. And this is very important because 15 is what I'm going to start my if statements based on. So 15 is a multiple of 3 and a multiple of 5. However, if I were to make my first if statement, I modulus 3 equal 0, then it would be replaced with the word fizz instead of fizz buzz. So I'm going to use if I modulus 3 equal 0 and I modulus 5 equal 0. Then I want my fizz buzz list to add the word Fizz Buzz. So I just want to make sure that I'm thinking ahead and having that as my first if statement. That way I can move throughout this for loop without worrying that the 3, 5, and the multiples of 3 and 5 are not incorrectly replaced with the wrong words. So the next thing I'm going to do is an else if, and now I'll just run through my I modulus 3 equals 0, and we'll go ahead and say fizzbuzz list dot add. We're going to say fizz. Now, it's always good that when you're putting these words in here to make sure that fizz is the right one. I've done that a couple times as well. So fizz is for the multiples of 3. Else if I modulus 5 equals 0, we'll just Fizz Buzz list. Oop. And see, if you're going to make a mistake, make sure that you catch it before you start moving forwards. Point add buzz. And I know that's easier said than done, so make sure we throw that semicolon in here. So now I've done Fizz Buzz, Fizz, and Buzz, but I also want to ensure that each one of the numbers goes in even though it's not a multiple of 3 and 5. So we'll go ahead and do that by else. And we will say, oops, I like these on their own line. Else is going to be Fizz Buzz list dot add. We're going to string interpolation by, and make sure I add that semicolon. So now I'm done inside of the for loop. This will add the 1, the 2, the fizz, the buzz, and the fizz buzz in the order that I would like, because it's going to identify that 15 as meeting both the statements in the first if statement. But that does not finish my algorithm. I also need to come down here right outside of the for loop and make a return statement, and we're going to return our Fizz Buzz list. Oops. Fizz Buzz list. So for me, this is going to finish out my algorithm, but I'm not done yet. So the next step that I like to take is to ensure that I walk through what I've written so that it matches what I had inside my head and gives me the correct answer. So for this one, it will create a string or a list of strings that's available to hold the strings that I'm going to add. In my for loop, that 1 is going to execute down there at the bottom and add it to the list. 2, then it'll be fizz, buzz, and it's going to work exactly how I think it's going to. There's also the chance to optimize here. For me, this is as optimized as I think I'm going to get it, but you might be a little bit more experienced than me and able to optimize a little bit more, but I like to do it at the end once I have at least a good product to present. If you notice you have something else or you'd like to make small changes, this might be the time to do it as well. So I hope you like this little lesson, and thank you very much.